Hello. And welcome to another episode of
the Super Data Brothers Super Data Show.
I am Ryan.
And I am Eric.
And we are real life brothers working in the data and analytics industry.
It's true.
Have we got a good one for you today? I am super pumped about this episode.
Yeah. You know, Ryan, I'm so excited for today's episode because I'll be honest with you, I don't really know what a data product is. You spend a lot more time on LinkedIn, so you probably know a little bit more than I do, but I don't spend that much time on LinkedIn, so I don't really know what a data product is. And we've got our guest today, Santona Tuli, coming on, and she's a real expert on this, so I'm excited to hear what she has to say and learn a bit about data products.
Absolutely. And remember, while we're going through this, this is a live show. It's not pre-recorded, so we have more fun and you have more fun if you get your questions and reactions into the chat. So while we're starting off here, why don't you go ahead and let us know where you are tuning in from in the chat, and let's get things started. So, and one more thing, we are going to be giving away the coveted Super Data shirt. Woo, there we go. At the end of the show. So if you are watching on YouTube, go ahead and punch hashtag Super Data Brothers, all one word, into the chat, and that will register you for the shirt giveaway at the end of the show.
Yeah, and later in the show, I'll do another reminder for the shirt giveaway because people trickle in as the hour goes.
Okay, cool. So, any business before we get rolling? I don't think so this week.
No, I think that about covers it.
All right, so let's go ahead and welcome Santona to the stream. Santona, how's it going?
Hi, it's going great. How are you? It's great to be here.
Doing good.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'm so excited to have you on this show to help us demystify data products for our audience. So why don't we start off by, what an amazing logo, watching from Prague CZ. Yeah, welcome, Joanna. Why don't we start off by just, why don't you give the audience a little introduction to who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Santona. I started doing data work through my particle physics PhD back in 2014, 2015, working with massive particle collision data, looking for rare signals, and I've just always really enjoyed that, it's maximizing signal to noise, feature engineering, and trying to get something out in a busy field. Worked at NLP for a little bit as a machine learning engineer, worked as a data scientist at Astronomer, which is a managed airflow company. And now I am at Upsolver, heading up data. And what I like about my current role and my previous role as well is that it's a very cross-functional role. There is, of course, analytics work as there is at any company. But in addition to that, because we're building data tooling, specifically data workflow tooling, I get to think about data workflow tooling as a product. And so I get to put on a product hat, I get to do user research. And, basically my job is to figure out how to build the best version of, right now, Upsolver, so that it's useful to the most number of people in our field.
That's awesome. Before we get into the data product and kind of talking about data, I'm curious about your transition from physics into the data world, and for a couple of reasons. I also got into data, studied something like radically different. So I studied theater and playwriting before I got into data. For that reason, and also because I'm like the biggest physics geek you can be while you're terrible at math, right? So like you read all the books and then they start talking about the equations and my eyes kind of glaze over. So what was that like? What was that transition like? And when did you realize that maybe you wanted to kind of move out of the hard science physics and more into the data world?
Yeah, the transition was definitely less stark than yours because, as I said, I was doing data work as a physicist, but there was still a lot of so essentially the methodologies are the same. Well, I mean, they're both like, you know, you're working with data and you're trying to get something that is statistically significant. You're trying to get results. But of course, the degree to which you like the precision is very different, right? So in physics, we have this thing like 5 sigma effect and so on and so forth. So just a lot more rigor there. So that's one thing that sort of it's less prevalent here. And then on the converse side, right, it's a whole different ballgame in the industry doing data work for you know, productionizing your code, right? Writing solid code, productionizing it, making sure that the results or whatever predictive algorithm or whatever you're building is available to end users and so on and so forth, as opposed to like a long-term analysis that's a really deep dive. So these were things that I had to adjust to. But as far as methodologies, it's the same, right? It's working with data. The technologies are different. So we were using homegrown solution or in-house built solutions in particle physics, and now it's, you know, everyone kind of uses roughly the same stack, or, you know, plus minus. So those were some of the differences. I decided, I would say, probably in my third or fourth year during my PhD, that I wanted to go into industry. Nothing like it wasn't any major like factor. I just really I really enjoy physics, and I, you know, still try to keep up with things. But I didn't really want to be a professor. And you know, like, given the number of folks who get PhDs and the number of professorships open, and, you know, it's not really meant to be that way. You know, just because you're got a PhD or did a postdoc doesn't mean that, you know, you have to stay in that route. So it sounded interesting. A lot of folks were making the transition from physics specifically to data science. It was sort of the second wave of data science, data scientists being fun, attractive profession. So yeah, it's just like, yeah, let's try this. Cool.
And obviously it's been working out so far.
Yeah.
So one of the things I was really hoping you could help us demystify is just this idea of data products, and you see this conversation happening on LinkedIn. It pops up all over the place in the data world right now. You know, even in, like, you read the data mesh book, right? And she talks a lot about product thinking in there, and you know, producing data products for people. And so from your understanding, let's just start with a baseline. Like, what even is a data product?
Yeah. This is going to be from my understanding. So let me just caveat that, right? Because I think, as you said, it's not super well defined, and different people will have different takes. So my take is data product can be data as a product, analytics as a product, or ML applications, ML as a product, as long as the underlying thing that supports those products is data, or our data, then we can call it a data product. I think more often than not, people think about data as a product. I think maybe that's where the conversation started, which is, you know, a big part of it, of course. So there is that, but I think increasingly we're including at least analytics deliverables in the data products conversation. And really, it's just a mindset of thinking like a product manager or thinking like a product person as you're building data assets, right? Or data-based deliverables. I think that's the crucial part of it. It's not so much what is a data product, rather how you should think about various data deliverables.
So it's more of a almost like philosophy of producing data assets than it is a fixed type of data asset.
Yeah, so it sounds like basically the core concept is like ownership of what you're providing for people to use, essentially. Like literally think of it like it's a product you're selling, except it's internal, so maybe you're not selling it, but still the concept's the same.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you should be selling an internal product too, not making money, but you should be marketing it. You should be telling people about it. You should be showing the value to potential users within your company. And then as you said, like the other side of it is you need to own it. So when someone does get excited about your product and then sign on to use it, it's not over. You need to make sure that they're consistently getting the product or products that they want, and that sort of continued taking care of the data assets is part of that product mentality.
So what would can you give us like some an overview of what is that product mindset, right? If someone has never heard this concept before and they're like, okay, you're telling me to think about my data as a product. How do you begin doing that? What does that mindset look like?
Yes. So I think of it as two parts. One is productionization. So product to productionization, right? So there are certain standards that we hold ourselves to, and I mean, frankly, the market holds us to for something that is being served as a product to other folks, right? I'm talking about reliability. I'm talking about uptime. I'm talking about quality. So those things. I sort of bundle into productionization / operationalization. So that's one component of data products, or thinking as a product person in data. And then the other aspect of it is bringing sort of the product management rigor to building data products. So in this case, we're thinking about gathering requirements, like what do I actually need to build? So I don't think that your business partner, especially, so let's say data as a product, right? Within a small-ish, medium-sized company, your business partners shouldn't be coming to you with, hey, I need exactly these things in this dashboard. I can't build it yourself. You go build it for me. That is not the role of a data person or a data team. It's coming in at an earlier stage, working with your business partners to figure out what actually they want answered. And even if you come later in the process, let's say that they have figured out like the metrics that they think are valuable for what they're trying to do, you can still enter the conversation and ask the whys. Like, why do you think this metric is important? Why not this other variation? And are these two things that you want to see actually kind of saying the same thing? So, I mean, it's never too late to have the conversation of what is going to provide signal for the question that you're trying to ask. So yeah, getting in ground level for any sort of ask related to data at the company, and then working together with business partners to figure out the requirements, writing up that PRD. So that's what I mean when I say the rigor of product management, right? Writing up that PRD, defining what is the done condition to be done, defining what are out of scope and what might appear in V2 of this product. So that those kinds of things is to me putting on a product management hat within a data team. And it doesn't mean you could have a data product manager, right? You could have a product manager on the data team. That is a perfectly good way to do it. Or this could be a data scientist or a data engineer who has interest in these areas and wants to take on that role. I've been that person before, and that also works really well.
Yeah. So one question that I think our audience might have, we have a number. We have different factions of our audience, right? And one faction is like these BI, like large enterprise BI team practitioners, right? Who maybe say, well, yeah, we've been doing this forever, right? Like we gather requirements and like we build what's on the requirements. So we're building data products. Is it that simple, or is there kind of like, you think about this old school IT waterfall workflow? Is that really product thinking, or is it different from that?
That's a really good question. I think it could be the same thing. I think it's going to go, on a case by case basis, depending on what you're actually doing. So this is a place where I think definitions are less important, or like the labels are less important than actually what's being carried out. So let me actually start with data as a product and then talk about analytics. So when you want to provide data as a product, there is a lot of groundwork that needs to go into there. So there is just the surface, I'll call it surface level, not to be dismissive of it, but there's a surface level task, data engineering task, of actually grabbing the data from the various APIs and data sources that you need, funneling them into your warehouse, let's say, or lake, and then providing some sort of output channel for others to consume the data. That is a bare bones framework, in my opinion, certainly not sufficient, right? Then you come in and say, okay, the data that I've pulled in that are supposed to describe some aspect of my business, what's a relationship between them? How do the data sort of aggregate into different entities that are going to be meaningful when someone is asking a question about our business? So that what's traditionally called data modeling, right? And there's also factions there, pro data modeling against data modeling.
Yep.
But it's super important. I mean, I don't care what schema, what methodology or framework you follow for modeling your data, right? But I think that there's a necessary step there of turning raw ingested data into assets that will help answer questions. So that's to me stepping up from just data, or maybe data as a service, even, to data as a product. Sometimes we add on more and more stuff to it, including like access controls and things like that, which can be counterproductive. I mean, of course, we need access controls and governance, but the other thing about product thinking is figure out the MVP, right? The minimum viable product, and then be ready to package that up and send it out without continually adding stuff and without creating a lot of friction for folks actually being able to use your products. I might as well add, like, your data platform could also benefit from product thinking, right? So if what you're offering your business is a platform where business analysts, business intelligence engineers, and data engineers on domain-specific teams are going to write their own mini ETL pipelines or mini transformation pipelines, then that platform also has to be a contract between you and those people, those consumers. So that also benefits from product thinking. So yeah, for me, that's sort of data as a product, the process, again, not so much the definitions that matter. With analytics, yeah, absolutely, I agree. The best business intelligence engineers, the best data analysts, the best data scientists are already thinking about, are already gathering the requirements, already working with their business partners, for sure, to deliver value to them. So I think the only thing I'd sort of say there is, it's worth reading a book or two on product management, right? Or taking a small course, or however you want to do it, just to see if there are holes in your process as far as product rigor goes, because you might benefit from incorporating some of that as well. This is not like, I'm not saying that any one person out there isn't doing their job right, if as a business intelligence engineer, if they don't have a product mindset, because as you said, like, it's all about delivering value. If they're already doing everything, that needs to be great, but also it might be worth like thinking even more like a product manager. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I first came at this idea, we were reading, so it was in like 2016, maybe 2017, I don't know. I was working at a consulting firm and we were building a really small piece of software to help extend one of the big BI suites with some functionality it didn't have. And I read the book, The Lean Product Playbook, for the purpose of helping me learn how to build software, which I knew nothing about. I was just like got assigned to me. I'm in charge of a team of 3 software engineers and I don't know how to run a software dev team or anything like that. And so I read that book and I was like, and I had this light bulb go off where it was like, oh, these, why aren't we applying these concepts to like BI itself, right? It's not just about building software. And I can recall I gave a presentation at an IBM conference in 2017 or 2018 to a room full of people where I was trying to introduce these concepts. And, they seemed really excited by it. So I felt like, oh, there's maybe something here. Like this product thinking is not just applied to actually building software products, right? But we can apply it to our data practices as well. And so to see this way of doing things proliferate throughout the industry and to be able to, be on a call here and talk with you about it is like so cool to me. One of the questions that I maybe you can help us clarify too is like, what piece does the front end have in a data product? So, because sometimes I see data engineers talk about it a lot, for example, and from a data engineer's perspective, I would say most commonly, it seems that the product they're building is some sort of analytics ready data set, right? Or, a series of tables in a Snowflake or something like that, right? To them, that is the product. How does the actual front end experience factor into this? Like, is that part of the product? Is maybe the product a combination of the tables and the dashboards that they drive? Or is it it just depends on who you are and where you sit?
I think it depends on who you are and where you sit. One of the ways in which I do think data products are a little bit different than end user facing products is I've found that often the consumers of data products, like there's let's say there's a bigger range amongst the consumer of data products in what they would like to be able to do with the data and what they're capable of doing it with the data easily without more training, which when we're building for an external audience, end users, we try to get like the most build what's going to bring the most value to the most number of people, and we think less about sort of folks who may be power users or may need a little bit more hand holding. So it's a little bit easier to sort of figure out what exactly you need to build. But with data products, I've worked with super like folks who are really good doing data work that don't even have data in their title, right? They're doing some other role, but they don't want to be limited by a Looker dashboard or something like that you can't, or any other kind of dashboard that you can't really explore any more than what you're already provided. Right. So it really has to be a conversation and a continued iteration, I think, for internal data products. Certainly, it's going to include your data assets, like your, it could be tables, could be marts sitting in Snowflake or something. It could be dashboards or reports or newsletters. Like all of those things to me would be included in the full product suite, let's say, full data product suite, all of your offerings. But it's the trick is to figure out which of those apply to which users and not leave anyone hanging for more, because within a company, and this is again, it's a matter of scale thing. So I am, I guess, if I have a specialty, it's with smallish startups, and it's easier. I will of course, admit that it's easier to work with, maybe 20, 25 people that you have to satisfy with your data products as opposed to, hundreds or thousands even. And probably when you get to that thousands level, you do have to think a bit more, okay, this is what you're getting and sort of deal with it. But on the smaller teams, certainly I found a lot of value in just iterating, figuring out what exactly, like meeting folks at the level that they're at. and letting them have data. Like the ultimate goal is to empower folks with data, right? That's all it is. So I found it to be very counterproductive to say this is all you're getting. You don't get a seat in our Snowflake because we don't want to give that to anyone outside the data team. You are only getting this like Sigma or preset or whatever dashboard or seat. So yeah, it has to be a relationship building exercise.
Yeah, it's almost like what you're describing to me sounds like the product itself, and I've never thought of it this way, but this just kind of occurred to me based on what you said. Is like the product itself is not just a thing like a table or a dashboard, right? But it's almost the set of experiences and capabilities that you're providing, right? And then that goes across different actual assets, right? So you think of the data product of a particular domain as finance, whatever, right? And that like the finance product, just like your phone is not a single capability. It's a very large series of capabilities and interactions. And maybe that in some bigger sense is what you should think of as the product, is like what is the suite of capabilities and interactions I'm offering to different personas. Yep. And how does all of that work together and function as a whole?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Ryan, what you're describing there sounds like something we've talked about before. As we call it, the franchise model of analytics, right?
Oh yeah, yes.
Because you basically just described like here's all the offering of these products. Well, in the past we've talked about because Santona, you've talked about working with smaller companies and like working with bigger companies. You've kind of got to work with a whole bunch of different, almost semi-autonomous departments, right? So it sounds like with this data product idea, and I'm talking about this because I'm in charge of a department at a university, and we're central IT, and we have a whole bunch of partnerships with different places. So with a data product, it sounds like it's kind of like a way to reach out to those external departments and be like, here's our products. It's literally like a catalog, right? Here's the catalog. Here are the BI tools. Here are the data sources. Pick your poison, and then we can help you build it. So like I think what both of you are talking about right now is like something that's really powerful. That because I'm in charge of a analytics department, I think I'm going to try to take these lessons and kind of integrate it into like my own BI practice and like treat what we're providing as like an actual product someone can buy into. I think that's a pretty powerful idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, at large companies, Santona, you made the point that it may be a little more, here's what you get, right? And they do face a set of constraints when you have to serve thousands of users with something. It's, it narrows what you can provide in a way because you can't tailor it to individual experiences as much. But that is, I think, Eric, I think you're right. Like thinking about what are the experiences that as the central analytics team at Michigan State that you can offer? I mean, what are the experiences that we can offer people, and then treating them that way? I always encourage BI teams to think about, like, imagine that you were literally trying to sell people on the set of capabilities that you offer, right? And if and how would that change it, right? Because you do kind of, when you're in an internal analytics, in a way, you have a captive audience, right? They can't choose to leave, but
they can though.
Well, that's right.
They individually can choose to leave their department,
and they organization. And they will just do it themselves ultimately if what you're offering doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
So, Santona, do you view almost this product thinking as a way to help prevent that? Like, so many data teams lament the things that are going on in the shadows that they have no influence over. Will product thinking help solve that, do you think?
Absolutely. Yes. I think that is probably the largest value proposition of product thinking in data, at least for me. It's because it lets you build those cross-functional relationships in a way that engenders trust, as opposed to being like, we're providing a service to you. It's more, let's work together on figuring out how I can help solve your problem, and how you can solve me, better understand the business, because that's another thing. Like it's a give and take, right? Data teams don't automatically, just because they have the data doesn't mean they understand the business. There's definitely that like domain expertise and from other teams that has to come in to build that understanding. So it's this relationship building exercise that I think is fundamental to thinking of data product and data as a product and data analytics assets as a product that is what's really powerful. So I've worked I can speak to specific experiences. So I worked on a team where we built it was essentially one person, but we built a tool that was for it was a platform, basically a data platform. If you wanted to add new sources to our existing data warehouse or data model, then you'd have to use this specific platform in order to pull in the sources and go through the certain rigor of making sure it conforms with the rest of what we've built out, and then only would your data set, let's say, be a official data set as part of the official business or business understanding. And this, unfortunately, this was a pretty involved process, a pretty involved platform, and so we got some pushback, but more importantly, we were slowing folks down. Because, highly capable data engineers working on different teams, they can write their own connections to different things, pull in data from APIs. Why would they waste a week or two going through, this hour process that we had put a stamp on, and then lose those couple of weeks, for getting to the same answer that they would have gotten anyway. So I think that's an example of, and yeah, as you said, I've heard other people lament this as well, is an example of when you're either slowing people down or making them do something they really don't want to do, or they'll do a backdoor, they'll go around the process anyway. And at the end of the day, even their managers or their managers aren't going to care how they did the work as long as the results are there, right? If you can answer the question that I'm asking for my finance review or something, I don't really care if you went through the process that the data team is telling you. I care that it's accurate results and the quality is good, but there are other ways I can figure that out, or I can build that trust with my team directly. Those things happen. And I've found that thinking being a product manager essentially, or a data scientist who's really thinking about product and building those cross-functional relationships has helped me lubricate those points of friction, right? Okay, you don't have to start using this platform today. It's a lot of overhead. Let me work with you. Why don't you build the version that you would build, which is going to be really quick for you, and then I will work with you to get that incorporated into our platform, because it's not on you, it's us. We are producing this. We are the source of this this work, so we have to be willing to help mitigate that as well. And gradually we'll get you onto our platform. And I've done this, and I had a cross-functional partner who was in charge of the customer data platform. That was their role, and that was sitting outside of the data team. And over a period of 6 months or longer, we gradually got the CDP into our warehouse. But at all this time, they were able to get value from their customer data platform, and that's what their manager cared about.
Yeah, I just think that is such a key insight you just shared there, and the way you approached it is so smart. So it's almost like, there's this classic tension between getting things done quickly and building robust, long-lasting systems. And it sounds like, is that your advice to people on how to kind of solve that? Is partner with the business, help them, allow them to get things done quickly, but because of that partnership, you then have the relationship and the ability to kind of move it into the data platform over time. That worked for you?
Yep, absolutely. It's worked multiple times. Even when I was in physics, like I mentioned, often our analyses would span 2-3 years, but that didn't mean that we'd have to wait to get any value for those 2-3 years, right? So building the trust and getting the analysis team to make that framework that works, and we get the results. Maybe the error bars are large and we need to shrink that over time, but getting that result and then iterating with the stakeholders who are like wanting to see the results because they're impatient, or like they just want to see the analysis come out soon, and that like relationship and like iteration has paid off for me multiple times.
So how do you build that trust as a data team? Let's say you're on a data team, you don't feel like you have it today. Wait, what steps can you take to try to build that up to get the type of relationship you're talking about?
Yeah, a lot of soft work, a lot of work that and this is super important. You have to have the environment for it. So if your manager is not supportive of doing that sort of work, then that's not gonna work as well. But I would say at least take initiative. Like I'm speaking to individual contributors right now. Let's say at the senior staff, principal level, right? Mm-hmm. If it doesn't exist today, if that trust doesn't exist today across a company for the data team, then you don't have to wait for the leader of the team to make it happen. You can certainly take steps and take initiative. Just be a little bit wary that it's also, you also have to up manage, because the reason that relationship doesn't exist already is because whoever is leading the team hasn't seen the value yet from building those relationships cross-functionally. So you have to up manage them as well as build those relationships cross-functionally, but it's very doable. And then, speaking to data leadership as well, it's a matter of just having conversations. To me, it's, people say like, there's sometimes I see posts around a data scientist shouldn't have more than 2 hours of meetings on their calendar a week. It depends. What? Yeah.
Okay, that'd be nice.
And it depends, right? Maybe during a very heads down, you have a deliverable coming up for a couple of weeks, you can have that, and you know exactly what you need to do for the immediate future. You just need to execute. Fine, you don't need those meetings. Or maybe if you're starting out on a team and your job is really just to understand the code base and understand what you've built so far, that's fine. But as soon as you reach some level of this is a continued process. We're not just delivering one thing. We need to think about what's next. What are we delivering next? And then what are we delivering after that? And all of those things. And meetings have to come into the picture. You have to talk to your cross-functional partners. You have to inject yourself sometimes into conversations that normally is like, okay, a data person doesn't need to be here because they're not thinking about the metrics yet. They're not thinking about what would be valuable to follow, to what trends to notice as they're building a product. But actually, if you can get in on that like initial phase of ideating on a product, figuring out what needs to be built, you have a lot of value that you can add because you're used to thinking about things in terms of like, how do I get a number that answers that question, right? Like I think metrics building or KPI building is sort of becomes at least second nature when you're in the data profession for a while. So you can add value to them, and you can certainly get a lot of value from those meetings because you're figuring out what the business is thinking about, or what this cross-functional partner is thinking about building, why they're wanting to build it. So you get a lot of context, you can provide a lot of context, you do a few of those, and you just build a much broader understanding of how the business functions and what it needs. And then you can reach a level beyond just building data products, right? Which is like thinking ahead for what's next in the business and how is your data team going to impact that thing. So there's, again, like it's a time scale thing. On the short time scale, you figure out what you need to do and what the team needs to do right now. On slightly longer time scale, you know what other products are coming, what where your team resources need to go in like the next 3 months or something like that. And then the longer time scale, you understand what the relationships are within the organization. Who owns what and who's going to, what's our Q4 priority, what's our next year, H1 priority, and all of those things.
That was fascinating. Thank you. I think we've
got a few questions.
We've left a couple questions sitting in the chat because you were like dropping such good knowledge. I didn't want to interrupt. So Eric, why don't you cue those up?
We've got a question from Solomon Khan. How do you think data products change when you're selling the data product to an external customers versus internal customers? Is Solomon's question.
I think they don't change fundamentally, other than maybe you're selling tactics are a little bit different when you're actually trying to like make money off of it. But you should really think of even selling to internal customers and users as making money off of it, because it's going to impact your salary at the end of the day, because this goes back to data teams struggling to justify their existence and stuff, right? If you can't evangelize your products within the company, and if you don't get adoption, if you might produce 10 dashboards and expect that leadership team looks at them and makes decisions. But I think it's very conceited to think that way. I think leadership team also is going to listen to like the individual teams' insights and what they're showing. So it's not like, okay, we're going to sit around as a C-suite and we're going to look at these dashboards and we're going to make our decisions. No, you're going to have your CFO come in, say what they learned from their team, and you're going to get your customer org owner leader come in and bring their own insights. So it's and the more integrated you can be with those insights as well, and not just like this is the data team endorsed stuff, the better you can justify your existence to the company. I am bringing value. So that is all to say, there is a money bottom line. There's always a bottom line that relates back to value and money. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they should be too different. I will say, so working on a ML service, right, a machine learning service based application that went out to end users, they're like, again, like it's a kind of internal users are a bit more forgiving. Let's put it that way, right? Because your end users are for external products are so abstracted away from you that you're not really a person anymore, right? They're like, oh, this service didn't do the thing I needed in like the 2 microseconds that I could, have patience for it. I'm done with this service. So, you just have to think a little bit harder about reliability and SLAs when you're building external products. But, thankfully, you have more support there. So as an ML engineer, if you're building an ML application, you're going to have application engineers supporting you. You're going to have application-specific data engineers that are helping set up the communication channels and all of that. So you have more of that infrastructure to help you make sure that the production, that the product is properly productionized. But the concerns there are more along those lines. What's my reliability? How many nines of reliability can I offer? With internal, you get a little bit more leeway, but don't abuse that leeway, right? So if you have a data product that is being used but within your team, you should have an SLA. Whether or not you very explicitly promise that can be a little bit more fungible, but at least you as an individual and within the data team should have a process for if there is an issue, if something is, if a dashboard is incorrect, how quickly am I going to resolve that? How am I going to communicate why things are incorrect, and like how long is it going to take for me to fix it up, and how that's going to affect other people's workflows, because everything has an effect, right? Like if you're a useful data product, if you have a suite of useful data products that other people really rely on them. So it's then you also have to think about them as like first-class citizens for what you're building.
Awesome. So we've got a comment from friend of the show, Joe O'Brien here. So he says, from what I understand, a data product is also centered around domain ownership and some principles like discoverability, security, quality. He doesn't have a background in product dev, but does think these principles may be common in the sense that there's a responsibility to provide discoverability, security, and quality to a given data domain. And then he just says, great conversation and thanks. So how do data products fit into this kind of, data domain-centric thinking, data mesh thinking that we've seen proliferate in the data industry in the last year and a half?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'll start by saying that my depth isn't like I'm not super deep on large enterprise data models, and folks. I've of course listened to a few conversations where folks have implemented data mesh at larger enterprises, so I can speak to it, but I just want to caveat that. So with the idea of data producers, so like application teams, right, owning and treating the data that they're producing as source is a product, I think it's a really strong idea. However, I'm a little bit skeptical of how realistic it is in today's the way that we have set up value chains in today's business models, right? So let me dig deeper because I just said a bunch of words. So if I own or if I'm part of a team that builds an application for external, let's say, end users, right? Let's go back to the ML service as a product standpoint. So my job is primarily to make sure that my ML models are performing well, they're accurate, and they're using fresh data, and my end users are getting value consistently, reliably, and that like whatever feedback loop I have in place, new data comes in, I have to retrain and so on and so forth. That's my main role, is getting end users value from my ML model, right? What you're asking me to do in addition to that is the database that you're going to replicate for doing analytics on my application is I do a bunch of extra work to guarantee certain properties of that database and the data that you consume. Traditionally, it's been on the data ETL engineers, or the data engineers, analytics folks who will replicate the database and then build that analytics function. So now we're trying to move the responsibility further upstream to the application engineers, and there's a natural, like there's a tension there, I think. Until or unless you tell me that is part of my job and I'm going to be evaluated on that aspect as well, it's something that's going to be very hard to motivate the application teams on. But like that's not to say that it's certainly not a bad idea. It's something that I think we could all do better in terms of making sure our data is high quality, and some of the other things that Joe mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. Like, thinking about the security, discoverability of data as early as possible. I'm just a little bit skeptical of how upstream you can push it, but this is actually a good place to plug Upsolver quickly. Just like we do data quality at ingestion. So we don't actually, it like takes away that burden from application engineers or data producers, because we react to evolving schema. Like we auto detect schema, and then if there's a schema evolution, we can detect it, and we can either we'll write data according to the new schema, but we'll also alert you that, okay, there's been this change and how do you want to handle it and things like that. That's just one example. We do exactly once consistency guarantees. So often the database replication, right, is happening through some sort of change data capture process, or some sort of or some sort of streaming process, and sometimes you get duplicate records come in, and then they get discovered much later on. And when you're doing analytics and you're trying to do some joining, you have to do select distinct, and you're looking through the whole large table to make sure that you have unique rows. But we take care of that upfront as well. So exactly once consistency guaranteed, strong ordering of data, these things. So we focus on these data quality components at ingestion to relieve the data engineers of the pain of like, oh, no one's talking to me from the application team. I have to consume this data, but then it changes on me every other day. And there's like that data contract is not super solid. And then it also relieves the application engineers because they don't have to think about something that's traditionally not part of their job requirement.
That is fascinating, actually. I've got a customer with good data that we've been working with who has gone through the effort of building something somewhat like what you describe here with Upsolver themselves. And it was just a huge amount of work, and what they're trying to do is kind of detect and automate schema changes as they propagate through the stack, right? So there's been a schema change. What is the schema change? Okay, now let's automate it moving through to our warehouse. And then, good data, we're a BI tool, fundamentally, kind of a data platform BI tool. So then we detect that change and propagate that through to the end user facing analytics assets. But that's just like, you bring up this great tension. And I think I'm curious your take on the data contract conversation, because obviously this is the point where it happens, right? Is kind of, and if we think about Chad and, the presentation he gave at Data Day Texas last year, which Data Day Texas plug, you're going this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So all three of the people on this call right now will be at Data Day Texas. So join us January 27th in Austin. It is the coolest, chillest, most high value data conference that I attend. There's really no vendor BS. It's just like real talk about what's going on in the data industry. So
it's the first thing the Super Data Brothers ever did. Was go to
true.
Data Day Texas.
But so that kind of that shift left data contract thinking. Do you think these application engineers, how do you see it? Is that going well? Are they taking to this and this data contract idea and bringing, these traditional ETL tasks into what they do? Like culturally, how is that going? Yeah, right.
I don't know that I can really answer that. I think it's too early. I think we might be able to answer the question of how it's going maybe 6 months from now, when we have more data on folks that are trying it and versus folks that are not. So I don't want to conjecture. The value prop is solid. There absolutely, anytime there's a handoff of data, or anything really, but handoff of data between two systems and two teams, there should be binding contracts that make sure that things are as promised and so on and so forth. The issue is that often the contracts are not binding, and then that they're not enforceable. Right. This is a very, very common pattern that's like, okay, something breaks, and then you have even like in the best of situations, right, you have a piece of paper with someone that has ownership, but nothing actually comes of it.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who takes a very hard ass stance on that. It's like he'll get whenever there is an issue with a data pipeline, right, and folks like sort of naturally come to the data team or the data person, and it's like, okay, what's going on and all of that, and he'll very pointedly point to the contract and say, this is not our responsibility, this is someone else's responsibility to figure that out. So, and there is value in that because accountability is important. So again, solid value prop. I think data contracts are fundamental at every stage of data handoffs. It's not only at the front end of or at the upstream end of producers to everything downstream, but also if you're thinking of data products as products, then you have a contract between the data team or whoever is building that product to the consumers as well. So the more we can tighten each of those exchanges, the better it is. But yeah, my only skepticism is, as I said already, you can't just assign responsibility without backing that up with something that actually holds you accountable, right? And I, again, as an application engineer, I'm not going to care if you have duplicate data in your warehouse from my service, because my guarantee is at least once delivery. I want to make, and then I have to move on to my other responsibilities. So until or unless there's like a very, it becomes part of your evaluation matrix, rather, it's not gonna be effective.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's like that in all things in life, right? If at the end of the day, you're not going to be judged on something and you're not going to be held accountable for it, when life gets busy and, you inevitably have to cut something, those are the things that you cut. We have a comment here from Chris B. I'm a lead senior data scientist of an analytics team on a global project. I'm expected to deliver products while also having 5+ business calls a day. I'm unable to finish up a product. It's so noisy. So obviously sympathy for Chris, but any advice in this sort of situation?
Yeah. Are you doing this all by yourself, and why? So maybe this is ammunition to just ask for more headcount. I do think that we tend to overburden our leads, like team leads. At some level, your job is going to switch into more, relationship building, gaining context, delegating tasks, figuring out, what needs to be done, as opposed to doing it yourself. You'll do some part of it, but it's in addition to that, you have to do all of those things. So, if you're not getting value from the business calls, then, decline them. Right. It is what it is. You have to pick the parts of your job that add the most value to the company. And sometimes you have to pick the parts of your job that your manager thinks adds the most value to your company. Right. And that's not the same thing. I've had differences with my managers before, where I knew, certain software work that I was doing was adding more value to the company, as opposed to, number of PRs and so on and so forth. So it's a tough thing to figure out. But so yeah, headcount, figure out how you want to add value. And in that situation, the thing that you need to do is up manage and sideways and, horizontally manage and then prove out the value of the work that you're doing. So if you think that the business calls are important, getting that context is more important than trying to finish up some product, then communicate, build up evidence for that and communicate that to folks who are wanting those results, and say, okay, this is a better use of my time. Let's hire a junior data scientist who can, build out that product.
Yeah, that's great advice. Okay, we are just about at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap things up there. Santona, thank you so much for coming on. Really a great conversation, and I think a lot of really valuable insight and advice was shared today. So I knew this was going to be a good one. I tried telling people on LinkedIn, like, look, you don't want to miss this one. It's going to be awesome. And you really delivered. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. And so where can people find you? Last question.
Mostly just LinkedIn. I'm very single-tracked in my social media presence. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to talk about all things data. I love giving talks and just talking to people. So yeah.
Yep. And last plug again, Data Day Texas. You don't want to miss it. Come say hi to all three of us down there. Okay. It was great talking with you. Take care.
Bye.
All right, man. What a good episode.
Yeah. No, that was very interesting and enlightening.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we once again are the Super Data Brothers. Thanks for coming today. Any last words here, Eric?
No. I think we said it all.
All right, cool. So until next week, we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.